Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the week.
So this 95-year-old woman with Alzheimer's was living in a senior home, and then suddenly she went missing one day. So obviously everybody's freaking out. So a family member had suggested that they go to this house she had been living in and moved out of 2 years before. And when police got to the house, they found it completely hoarded with garbage. They also surprisingly found this really unkempt man living on the property. He seemed to have a mental illness. He was really not being helpful with the investigation and the search for her. So they had to put him in this involuntary psychiatric hold to be able to gain access to the house. And when they finally got in the house, they started searching and they got to the bathroom and they ended up finding this mummified man on the toilet.
Could you imagine? We say this all the time. Like, what the hell do cops see sometimes? They were just looking for this lady and they just so happened to stumble across a dead guy sitting on the toilet completely mummified.
Yeah, and it's not only that, it's like this other guy was just living amongst this property with this dead man and all this trash in it. And obviously the house smelled really bad, but at first I don't know if it necessarily triggered a red flag that there was a decomp in the house because, well, I don't know if a decomp and a mummified body are the same thing, but
Mummification is a form of decomposition, but sometimes it doesn't really smell as bad as you would think it would. Because what happens when you're decomposing is that the bacteria that's inside of your belly ends up multiplying and helps the breakdown process or decomposition process. And most of the time when we show this in the gross room, you think of a person that's like green and bloated and all of that stuff. But in certain conditions, the body can almost reverse that in a way and stop it. And that could cause mummification. So if the body was in a dry environment or a cool environment, something like that, that could cause the person to not decompose in the traditional way you would think of it. And it really, the person looks like a mummy like you would see the Egyptians did or other cultures do the mummification process, which is not natural. They're giving chemicals and treatments and herbs and things like that to accelerate that process.
Yeah, so they like walk in this bathroom and find this guy mummified just sitting on a toilet. They think he was there for a couple weeks, maybe a couple of months, and they believe it is the missing woman's son. So they're doing DNA, which is
So was
pending.
that person wasn't missing though?
That's why I'm like, what was going on in this house? Nobody heard from this person. The old woman was found safe eventually near the senior home, so she is okay. But I have a million questions. Is this person related? Was nobody looking for this other guy? What was possibly going on over there?
She was in her 90s, right?
Yeah. And was the
So when you're in your 90s, your kids are seniors too, you know what I mean?
But was the other guy her son too that was living on the property? I'm just so confused what was going on with the dynamic.
That's kind of what I got from it. But you know what's really interesting? Some of the cops that were involved in this story were interviewed and they said that they were saying it's not really uncommon to find people dead on the toilet.
Yeah, which is really interesting because obviously the most famous case of this is Elvis, right?
So the reason that is because when you're on the toilet and you're straining and you're pooping, you can cause this sudden increase in blood pressure, which can kind of trigger any underlying heart conditions you might have. So if you were already on the verge of having a heart attack anyway, that sudden increase could cause you to go into cardiac arrest.
I mean, it's just scary to think, you could just be taking, how many times you go to the bathroom in a day and then one time it's just it for you. I mean, they said they didn't suspect any foul play, so I'm assuming this is something natural like you're talking about.
Yeah, they think it's natural, but I mean, it's not. It's something that people don't really talk about too much. If you really think about all the people in your life that you know and died, you don't really ever hear of someone that died on the toilet, but apparently it happens a little bit more than kind of embarrassing, And
I think when people hear that dead bodies are found mummified, there's this assumption that somebody did that to them, not that could naturally happen.
Yeah, and it totally can naturally happen. Another point with the bathroom too, with dying on the toilet, if you're a person and you're in a house with someone, right, and they have a heart attack and they drop right in front of you, you're going to start doing CPR or call 911, and there's a possibility of them surviving that, right? But the bathroom is just this weird private place where people go in, and you typically don't go in looking for them unless they're gone for a long time or something like that. So that also would increase the risk of people dying on the toilet like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know, it's very disturbing to me to think it's just like an everyday, multiple times a day activity, just part of your natural body, and then it
Yeah,
could just
the
go
only
down
thing
like that.
disturbing about this story is just the cops just kicking open the door or whatever, looking in the door, just peeking around to see what's going on and seeing that. Just a little disturbing.
No, horrible.
Okay, celebrity news.
So last month, this 76-year-old senator from Kentucky, Johnny Turner, he was on his lawnmower and accidentally rode it into the deep end of an empty pool. And this caused him to have very serious injuries. He's been in the hospital since this happened last month, and now he's died as a result of his injuries.
Well, he's older, right?
Yeah.
He's 76 years old, and pools are what, at least 5 feet deep in the deep end, if not more. Some of them go up to 10 feet. It just depends. They didn't really say in the article how deep the pool was, but that's a huge drop as it is. And then you're on a moving vehicle that is 600 pounds probably.
Yeah.
Might fall on top of you, not to mention the fact that it's a lawnmower and it's got a giant rotating blade on the bottom of it. So they didn't really say what his injuries were. I'm assuming mostly blunt trauma from the fall and just getting hit or having that machinery fall on him, but also he could have had some sharp injuries from the blade as well.
I mean, all right, so I had an incident where I was working on usually work at my dining room table when I'm editing the show, and I heard this loud noise outside, and my neighbor, who's around the same age, was on his ride around lawnmower, and he like plowed into his garden. And I don't know what happened. I was just looking out the window and saw, and his wife ran out, and he was totally okay and everything. But I think those things like really bump if you hit the pedal, they can go really fast.
We used to have, no, you want to hear the most messed up thing? We used to have one when I was a kid, and Pop-Up used to let me mow the lawn when I was like 8 by myself.
And Louie used to drive me and Dee Dee around on it when we were little kids, and we'd go in the woods and play Tremor.
Oh, I sit there and think about this, and I'm just like, what were people thinking sometimes?
I'm constantly thinking what was going on in that house. I don't know.
Just a little small inside.
I think by the time Louie was driving me and Dee Dee around on it, I mean, Louie had to be like, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old, but the lawnmower part of it didn't work, but it still drove around. So we would just drive around.
That's better. I mean, you could still get hurt by it, but no, when I was using it, the lawnmower part definitely worked because I was doing it as a chore,
Yeah, but all I have to say is my neighbor was totally safe, but I think if you hit the gas too much, then they really fly. So I could see how this could accidentally happen, but it
sucks. It just sucks. I mean, I think in general, especially a pool that's empty is even more dangerous. Well, I guess it's not if you know how to swim and there's a pool and you fall in it accidentally, it would suck, but you would be fine. Obviously, if you don't know how to swim, it's dangerous, but there shouldn't be giant holes in anybody's ground that are open for them. I mean, it's just an accident waiting to happen.
I mean, if he fell and the pool was full of water, could he still have been injured or drowned or something? Or would the injury have been less severe?
It just depends how he fell in the water with the thing.
Yeah.
I would think it would be less severe, honestly, but I don't know. I mean, it's not electric, right? So you're not at risk for that. I would think that you would, if he knew how to swim, he would be easily able to get away from it better. But if it fell in because that thing weighs more and it kind of rolled over and he was still sitting on it, it could have, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what happens. And the dude might not even have known how to swim. I don't know. It's just like, it's a freak accident, but it's also, why is there a giant hole in someone's yard that's not covered? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely should have been covered. All right, so this next story is like kind of crazy to me because it's Real Housewives related, and I've been very aware of this clip that we're about to talk about, but I never really know how this woman really felt about this going down behind the scenes. So Vicki Gunvalson, she's one of the like OG housewives. She was on the first franchise ever. She was one of the first women cast ever. She was on the show for so many years. I mean, they're on season 18 right now. I think she was on until like season 16 or something crazy. So there's this show on Vice called The Dark Side of Reality TV, and tonight they have an episode coming out about the Real Housewives. And Vicki Gunvalson is on this show talking about how when she was filming Real Housewives of Orange County one day, her daughter kept calling her over and over and over again, but she didn't have her phone on her because they were in the middle of filming. So then her daughter called production and said, I have to talk to my mom right now. And they kept blowing it off, being like, you know, she's in the middle of filming. Is this important? And she's like, yeah, it's important. My grandmom died. So the production knows that Vicki's mother has died, and Vicki does not know this information. And it's not like Vicki's mom was sick. She had talked to her earlier that day. It was really unexpected that this death occurred. So, you know, any decent person would think to pull Vicki aside and be like, you have a family emergency, you should leave and handle it. But any good TV producer is like, no, we're going to film this because it's going to make good television. So that's exactly what they did. They were playing a game at Shannon Bedore's house. She's another housewife, and they're having a girls' night. And then they take Vicki aside and they're like, you have a phone call from your daughter. And they pull her into a side, and then she's literally filmed on television finding out her mother died. And she is screaming and crying as anybody would. And then the women start running out into the room because they realize what's happening and that she just found out that her mother died. And it's this horrible thing to watch. And Vicki's saying this was a completely traumatic thing to have gone through on television. And now it kind of just lives on the internet forever, this clip.
The fact that you are saying this is so outrageous to me, honestly. Like I want to like laugh out loud. You're telling me that someone is upset that their reality was filmed on their reality TV show.
Yeah.
Like these I'm sorry, but this is exactly what it's supposed to be, right?
Well, all right,
what are we supposed? You're upset because it wasn't scripted? I mean, like
no,
this is what they sign up for, right?
When she went on Watch What Happens Live after this episode came out, she at first said she wasn't upset about it because she signed up to have her whole life, whether it was good or bad, on television. So yes, to that extent. But I don't know. Like I'm in this weird place of being like, you signed up to have, like she said, the good and bad of your life shown. But like any decent producer would have been like, this is going to be a completely horrific, traumatic thing for you to go through. Maybe you don't want that on TV and living on the internet for the rest of your life. I mean, she's acting insane as any grieving person would that finds out.
I'm sure she could have said, you know what, like, you're not airing that.
That doesn't work that way. That you signed your life away. Like, it doesn't matter.
Well, I just do not even feel bad about this a little bit. Come on.
So, I don't know.
It's just like the most outrageous thing that this is even a discussion.
Here's the thing, is I think she's only speaking negatively about it now because she got fired from the show, even though
she needs money.
Well, I don't know if she needs money. She was pretty well off before ever going on the show, but I think she's really mad because she got fired from the show. Everybody else is still on the show. Not everybody else, but a couple of her friends that had been on since the beginning are also still on the show. She doesn't seem like she has the best relationship with Bravo right now. So when Vice came to her and was like, we want to interview you about this thing, she's probably like, yeah, I'm going to talk shit about them, of course.
She sounds stupid, though. Like, you're talking, like, you're not talking any shit. This is just like, what did you want them to do? I would have, like, if I was running that show, I would have done the same thing. You sign on a bunch of people that are willing to be open about their life. Well, like, that's juicy, right? Just don't understand.
Bethany Frankel was trying to start this movement like last year called the Reality Reckoning, where she was getting I think Mark Garagos to do this lawsuit where they were going to sue Bravo for their horrible treatment of their talent and everything, force feeding them alcohol and showing all these horrible things going on in their life. Like, this is what you signed up for, sweetheart. Like, I don't know what you want. I think it's crazy. They ended up just dropping the lawsuit because they're like, you literally have nothing, and we're not going after this major network owned by NBC because you have nothing.
There was a while that people were hitting us up and trying to have a reality TV show with us and our family. And my first thought was like, our life is so freaking boring. Like, and then so everybody's life is pretty boring. So the only way to make it interesting that there's a week thing all the time is to either make shit up or feed people alcohol or whatever to make it interesting. Because what does somebody want to watch me go to the Cherry Hill Mall later to do some returns? Like, that's my life today,
This
right?
is what
it's just not that exciting.
I don't think people realize this is how it goes down. I think a lot of people think these shows are scripted, and they're not scripted. But if they're at a dinner and it's boring and the producers know they're not getting good footage, they're going to go up to you and be like, didn't her husband get sued last year? Why don't you go bring that up?
You are delusional if you think they are not scripted.
They're not. You don't understand the definition of scripted. Scripted means there is a script and you are reading off of it. They are heavily produced.
No. They make shit up and they're like, okay, I was literally on a reality show before.
Yeah,
and
but
it's just
that's how
like
your show might have went. That's not how Real Housewives goes necessarily.
They seriously just like make shit up and they're like and they do it on the Kardashians too. You could just tell. And there's like,
but we're not talking about
thing.
Your show or the Kardashians. We're talking about Real Housewives, which has a formula of these women that have barely nothing going on in their lives, but they have a lot of money and everything, and they have a lot of dark secrets that always come out. And then producers behind the scenes find all this out, and then they egg the women on to then have natural fights on camera.
You don't think that these stories are made up at all? You honestly believe that?
I think some of them are made up. I don't think all of them are. And I think people will exaggerate a lot of stories going on because they need a storyline.
All right, just let's stop talking about this trash TV. But anyway, this lady's mom, apparently she didn't even have an autopsy and they said she had a heart attack, but she was like 83. So
yeah. So
whatever. People die, that's it. I just think this is what you signed up for. This is like the producer's dream, and this is what you signed up for, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Freak accidents.
All right, so a 37-year-old travel photographer was at a Kansas airfield over the weekend taking photos of people getting on and off of airplanes. And then while she was shooting, she accidentally backed into an active propeller on a plane, which gave her really serious injuries. And then she was taken to the hospital and later died.
Jeez, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Propeller wounds are chop wounds, so they're a combination of blunt force trauma. So you'll see bruising and you'll see hemorrhage, tearing of the skin, and then also it's sharp injury from the propeller blade that will leave incisional wounds as well. I mean, they're if you ever seen anyone that got injured by a propeller or from a boat's propeller, it's just terrible what the injuries look like. They look really painful.
I could totally see how this happens. I think when you're taking pictures and you're going really fast and you're so focused on trying to capture the right moment, I mean, obviously not to this severity, but I've been like shooting weddings in the past and everything, and you like bump into a table or like, you trip and fall over something, but like you're totally encaptured in what you're doing at the moment and looking through the viewfinder and trying to figure out what your next shot is going to be. That I think really it just completely, slipped her mind where she was, and it was probably loud everywhere if all these different planes were on, so she probably didn't even realize that she was getting closer to it, what was going on. And it's just really horrific that this happened.
Yeah, that's a shame. Okay, we don't really have many in freak accidents this week. True crime.
Okay, this story is truly like, I can't even believe this woman did this. In Florida, this chick and this guy she knew decided they were going to go hang out at a fernery and have a couple of drinks. Of course, I had to look up what a fernery was, which seems like it's a field where they grow ferns in Florida. So she said shortly after them driving back there, the guy had snorted a line of cocaine and just did a complete 180 and started acting really crazy and violent. So when she started getting scared, she decided she was going to call 911 and pretend like she was ordering a pizza. So the 911 operator was obviously confused at first and said, do you know who you called? And she said yes. And then he was able to get her to answer certain questions by her acting like she was ordering a pizza, which was so awesome. And then they were able to find her location through her cell phone, and they were able to find the field they were in. When the cops got there, they heard loud music, so they went towards that sound. And then as they got closer, they heard her screaming, and they were able to get the guy as he was about to rape her.
Yeah, this is a really cool kind of lesson to teach people in case you're ever in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious how she, was saying, I'm going to order a pizza and have somebody come where we are because they were like in the middle of a field, right?
Well, that's also what I thought too. Like if you're in a situation where you're going to be in some kind of trouble, like if there's a guy that breaks into your house or something, when is it appropriate to be like, hey, can you stop raping me because I need to order a pizza or whatever it is? You know what I mean? The whole thing is a little bizarre because if she was out in the middle of a fern field, like why would you, how could you
I
even get
don't
pizza
think
delivered?
I don't think at the time she called 911 that he had tried to rape her yet. I think he just started increasingly becoming violent and she started getting scared because she didn't know where she was. So she was like, hey, let me order a pizza. And if he's high on something, he might think that's an awesome idea. And then she's like using code words to try to get the cops to find her. Because otherwise, if he was in the middle of attacking her, why would he let her make a phone call at all?
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing sounds really weird. And some of the answers that she had to the questions, I listened to the call, just were a little like she said, I need to order a pizza, but then she would say, I'm here with this guy or something. Like it just was a weird answer that I feel like the guy would have been like tipped off that the phone call was weird. But I don't know. This particular situation to me is just a little weird, but I think in general it's a good lesson just for any person, especially I don't know how you would ever really be in a situation if you were in trouble to pretend to order pizza. The whole thing is just a little weird to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the
If
context
you're in
of
that much danger, like usually people aren't sitting around like, hey, what do you want to have for dinner?
Well, I think the context of her, like, having known this guy and thinking, "Oh, we're just gonna go hang out," helps with the story. Because when I was first reading it, I thought he, like, broke into the house and was trying to rape her, and she was like, "I'm gonna try to call for a pizza," which made no sense to me. But I think under the guise of, I know this guy, he said, "We're gonna go drive and hang out somewhere," and then he's high on something. I mean, he was intending to drink too. I think it was really easy and an awesome idea of her to come up with this, to be like, "You know what? I'm not feeling really great about the situation I'm in right now, and I don't know where I am, so I'm just gonna see what I could do and call the cops and see if they can
So
find me."
yeah, so this is for people who are dating then basically. Like if you're on a shitty date where you feel like you're in danger in any kind of way, you could always call 911 and pretend that you're ordering a pizza, or you call and pretend you're ordering an Uber or something, whatever you want to do, like so they're not tipped off that you're trying to get the cops to come pick you up.
There was a code word flying around at bars a couple years ago, I don't remember what it was, where you could order something really specific from the bartender, and that was code of, like, "I'm in danger, help me." It was, like, a
Oh,
really weird drink, but I don't remember what it was, but that was going around for a while, and I think it did end up saving a couple of people from really shady situations, so that's cool, but it's really important, to try to, like, put your thinking cap on and be like, "How can I get out of this unscathed?" So, at least when the police got there, it seemed like an assault was in progress, but he didn't, successfully do that, so they were able to get him off of her, arrest him, he's in jail now, so that's really good to hear that she's safe.
yeah. It is good because if she didn't do this, you're assuming that something really bad would have happened, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I mean, she was either gonna get sexually assaulted or murdered or like, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? He could have kidnapped her, whatever, so you just don't know what's gonna happen when that's going through somebody's mind, and clearly he had bad intentions if when the cops showed up, he was in the middle of trying to assault her, so you don't
Yeah.
know how far it was gonna escalate.
Yeah.
Alright, earlier this year, a woman in Ohio was pulled over for driving by police with a strong smell of weed coming out of her car. So this 34-year-old
Like
woman
every other car that drives down the street now.
I know, I was gonna say that.
It's literally every car. You wanna hear something nuts? I didn't tell you this yesterday when, Gabe and I were test driving a car, and they let us go without the guy, and we were driving around, and we pull up at a light, and we're, like, stuck in traffic because it was during rush hour, and all this weed smell kept going into the car because we had the windows down, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna return this car after just doing a test drive, and it's gonna stink like weed inside." And they're gonna be like, "What the hell were you guys doing in there?"
I mean, it's literally everywhere you go
It's
anymore, so
everywhere.
I feel like something else about this car had to be, triggering the police to be like, something's not right about this. But anyway, they pull the car over, and it's this 34-year-old woman and her 15-year-old daughter in the car. So they had asked them to step out of it. When they started searching the car, they found a lot of drugs and paraphernalia inside. So they both got arrested, which that's not fair to the teenager. And at the police station, the teenager revealed that she had more drugs in her bra and in her vagina.
Yeah, that's so fucked up. That kid could have died, really.
Well,
I
even
mean,
died,
listen, the
you're
kid's
doing what your parents telling you to do.
Yeah. I mean, and she got, what is she getting? She got arrested and she's going to jail for a sentence for like a year to 15 years or something.
Yeah, it's a 1 to 15 years for prison for charges of possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver, and 1 year of supervised probation. So she was also potentially going to have a charge for child neglect, but that was suspended. And apparently, if she doesn't adhere to her probation rules, then she could go to jail for the rest of her life. But I mean, what about the kid? She's going to get out and be like, cool, snitch. Thanks for ratting me out, right?
What if the drugs that were in her vagina ruptured and they could absorb into your body and could have killed her?
Yeah.
Why isn't that considered I mean, I guess that's child endangerment, technically. I don't know if there's an age. There's an age, like, obviously, if that was an 8-year-old, it would be different than a 15-year-old, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, they might say, oh, the kid did it on her own, kind of, you know?
They can, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, the child has a more developed brain and they're like closer in age to being an adult. But if you have an abusive parent, are you going to say no? Like, they don't know what's going on in that house.
Well, yeah. No, I know. I mean, I'm just saying that they could have been hanging out almost as friends, and obviously it's terrible because you shouldn't be an adult and doing that ever by yourself or with children. But, you know, I mean, was she a spicy, mature 15-year-old kind of that's just like, they're my drugs, I put them there, my mom didn't tell me to put, because it is possible that a 15-year-old could have did that, you know, that the mom wasn't just like, put a gun to her head, do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't think they would have found all that stuff in the car and it would have smelled if the mom had no idea what was going on, you know? So.
No, I'm saying, though, the mom has an idea what's going on, but the mom may not have forced her to put the drugs in her vagina.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, she very well could have. But the kid could have did it on her own, is what I'm saying.
Regardless, she's complicit in it, so it doesn't matter.
Oh,
she
yeah,
deserves
she
to
is.
go
She's
to jail.
A terrible person. You shouldn't be doing crack with your kids.
It didn't seem like the kid had any criminal charges, so I'm sure they found that she was either a victim of abuse that was coerced into this, or something. I don't know, or maybe she, you know, has some immunity for snitching on her mom. So you don't know. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we have some awesome posts, especially ones that are relevant to Halloween this week. I just did a death dissection on the movie Seven, which was super fun to do. So I watched the movie and went through all of the 7 deadly sins and which ones were probable and which ones I still can't figure out exactly how the person died, which was actually a huge portion of them, believe it or not. So I think that you guys will really enjoy that. And we have ones we wrote last year about the deadly Halloween candy, people choking on things, people getting poisoned by Halloween candy. So I think you guys will really be into it for the spirit of the season.
Yeah, head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up for only $5.99 for the month.
Okay, medical news.
We have an update, finally, about one of the many stories we talk about, and it's about the woman who was the Wells Fargo employee that we reported had died on her desk on a Friday and was not found until Tuesday, was it? Tuesday morning?
Yeah.
So she seems to have died from natural causes, suffered a sudden cardiac death related to scarring of the heart muscles. What does that mean?
So when you have a heart attack, it's called a myocardial infarction. Myocardial means the heart muscle. Infarction means death to the muscle. So when you have a heart attack and you survive, that muscle then starts to heal, just like your arm would heal if you got a cut, and it forms a scar. And sometimes when people have a history of heart disease and had multiple heart attacks, when you do the autopsy, you could see evidence of past heart attacks and scarring in the heart. So that's all that means, basically. When you have, like, if I had a heart attack right now and I never had one before, when you look at my heart grossly, just like if you had it in your hand and you were looking at it, you wouldn't see any scars, because a scar, just like right now, if you got a cut, you wouldn't see a scar yet because it's brand new. A scar is indicative of the body's healing process. So when you see scars like that and you're cutting through heart muscle, you automatically know that the person's been having heart trouble. But you would confirm that by looking at the coronary arteries to see if there's blockages and things like that. But I mean, this was to be expected. She just died and had a heart attack at her desk,
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they said immediately they didn't suspect any foul play or anything, so
Yeah.
not
But
surprising.
we're just so happy to get an update because we never get one. You know which story I'm dying for an update is?
What?
The one that we did last week with the Walmart employee that was found in the oven.
Yeah.
Like, I need to know what happened in that case.
I know they've now identified the girl and there's a GoFundMe in place, but I think there's still an investigation as to what's happening. And I know that reports are saying that her mother also found her, who was also working at Walmart. So that is horrible. I'm really curious to see how this happened, if it was a malfunction of the oven or protocol that wasn't properly in place at the store. I'm just really interested to see.
Yeah, I'm sure we will, because I feel like the story kind of blew up this week, that people are going to want to know more about it. So
Yeah, when we reported on it last week, I feel like it just came out the day before, so there was really not a lot of stuff about it, but we'll keep our eye on it because I'm really interested to see what they determine happened there.
Mother Knows Death is up to date on all the latest breaking news.
We
All
try.
right, what about this story?
All right, last week, these emergency workers were called to the seafood distribution plant in Maryland after dozens of people were reported to have food poisoning. So, of course, you'll hear it's a seafood distribution plant. You must think in your head, oh, it's from the plant. Oh, no, it was from a dish that a coworker brought in that they made over the weekend.
I guess this is the fear anytime you have a potluck situation or any kind of bringing in food from someone else's house, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you don't want to think about it, but I guess this could happen at parties, and it's just 46 people getting sick. That's insane.
46 people got sick. So, according to sources, it was a Filipino dish called pancit, which is a noodle dish that consists of usually of rice noodles, onions, carrots, cabbage, chicken, or pork. Honestly, it sounds so delicious. I mean, I would be jumping to eat this
All right,
too.
so I would say that so these people seemed like they got sick like 3 hours after eating this,
Which
right?
was weird to me because as we learn in restaurant safety and everything, most food poisoning cases happen within 12 to 24 hours after eating.
But there are certain ones, like Bacillus cereus. We've talked about this on the podcast before. That's the one that you can get. Remember, we were this might actually even been before we started Mother Knows Death, about a guy that got really sick after eating Chinese food leftovers that weren't refrigerated overnight.
Because of the rice?
Because of the rice, yeah.
I think that was
So-
on here.
So if not, it was when we were doing in the grocery room. But that case, that's one that happens fast. Shellfish, there was no shellfish though, right? It just
so
said
this dish could have different types of meat in it, so I don't know what the specific one had. I had just looked up the common ingredients that's made.
So, and also just Staph aureus, that's a super common one too that could cause you to get sick pretty fast. And that's one you would see you could see in potato salads and egg salad and different meat dishes. So it could have been one of those things that just caused it to happen that fast.
So, like you said, 46 people were taken to the hospital, all in non-critical condition, but the hospital had to declare it a mini disaster alert due to the number of patients, and the plant will
and you don't
longer-
know if people are going to get worsening symptoms that would require more personnel. It's not like, sometimes it's just like, okay, throw up a couple times and get it out of your system, but other times food poisoning can be really bad.
Yeah, and the plant will no longer allow outside food, as I'd imagine. We have like a similar story to this in our family. Remember with Gina giving birth and the funeral?
No, I don't. Wait, what happened?
Okay, Gina was pregnant, I think. Our cousin Gina was pregnant, I think, with Natalie, and they were at a funeral in our family, and she started going into labor. So right before dessert came out, her and Sean left the funeral to go to the hospital. So when she was in the room, like getting ready to give birth, other people from our family started showing up at the hospital because apparently the cream puffs gave everybody food poisoning at the funeral.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
So then when I was planning my wedding and I was telling my mom I wanted to have a plate of cannolis and cream puffs, she was like, no, don't.
Yeah, everybody's like scared to death of it now.
Yeah, because
Was it at I guess they had, what was it, from the luncheon after the funeral?
yeah, so I guess the caterer just like left them out or something happened,
Oh
but
my
everybody
God.
that ate them got really sick.
Could you imagine if Gina ate them and was like having this food poisoning while she was giving birth?
No, I really
Oh
can't.
my
He
God.
was telling me this a couple months ago, and I was like, I can't. I heard of the food poisoning when I was planning my wedding and stuff before, but I didn't realize it was the same day she was going
Whose
into
funeral?
labor.
Whose funeral was
I think
it?
it was Aunt Florence.
Really? I don't know. I
Ask
don't know.
Mom, Beth, I know you're listening. Confirm after you listen to the episode.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah, it is really nuts, but it's really scary. Like you said, it could happen really anytime anybody prepares food. It could even happen if you're preparing food the right way and the grocery store didn't store something. I mean, it could literally
See,
happen.
my
anytime.
father-in-law just had food poisoning a couple weeks ago, and it's funny because when I'm talking to them, they're like, "Yeah, it tasted a little weird." Well, when shit tastes weird, stop eating it. Like, there's a reason that it tastes weird, you know? This is like, Gabe, I had these like gluten-free pumpkin muffins from Trader Joe's, like in my kitchen, right underneath of one of the cake stands with the
the
lid on
cloche?
top. But I got it before he got home from when he was at the hurricane, right? So he comes home and he's just like, "Oh, are these any good?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even eat one yet. Just have it." And he bites. I guess he didn't even look at it. And he bites into it, and he's just like making this face. And then I look at the other ones that are completely covered in fuzz. I'm just like, dude, do you please pay attention to what you're eating here?
Yeah, I mean, it is so scary to just think this could happen at any time. But I mean, you just gotta kind of have blissful ignorance when you're eating food at a party or something that whoever made it took care of it. So,
Well, they just had a potluck at my kid's school, and it was so good. I just kept housing all the food, but that is always in the back of my mind, like, just because usually when you have events like that, the food's sitting out on the counter for a while, and then it's like people traveling there might take an hour. It's just like out of the fridge or heat or anything for a long time. And you just always worry about that, but I don't worry that much because I housed like 10 plates.
well,
Someone made this homemade pork fried rice. It just was so good. It just was so good.
Well, you made that really good whipped ricotta thing that you then dropped the rest off at my house, and I gladly ate the rest of it within minutes. All right, let's get into this next story, which is always my personal horror, contact lens problems. So over the summer, a 23-year-old had gone to the beach with some of her friends and started experiencing some severe irritation in her eye. Initially, doctors, like, think of how dick this is. They're like, you have sand in your eye. Like, I think you know the difference between having sand in your eye and a problem. So then they thought it was this common infection. They, sent her on her way with some meds. Over the next couple of weeks, the pain continued to get worse and her eye began to cloud over, which her doctor thought was some damage due to the infection, again, like kind of blowing her off. And then eventually she got referred to a specialist who confirmed that she had parasites in her eyes.
Do you remember we talked about this back in August? There was a pregnant woman that was taking a shower with
Yeah.
her contacts in, and she had the same thing. And so this woman just got, if you have a parasitic infection of your eye and it's treated right away, there's less of a chance of there being damage. But when you get a serious infection with this, 40% of people that get this infection go blind. So this is like not anything to mess around with. She doesn't seem like she was messing around with it because she kept going for treatment, but apparently the people that were taking care of her just weren't thinking that it was that serious. But so this is a parasitic infection from an amoeba. So it's called acanthamoeba. And it's so small, so microscopic. They were saying that it is 5,000 times smaller than the width of a strand of hair.
That's insane.
That's how small it is. But they have tests that they're able to figure out if a person has it or not. And Now she might not ever get her vision back, and she's trying to go for some surgery, which is very expensive to get done, and it doesn't even guarantee that she's going to get her vision back.
Yeah, and then you must be asking, like, well, how did she get it? From swimming in the ocean. So I think, when I go to the beach, I always wear contacts. I don't go to the beach often, but when
You literally have never stepped foot in the ocean, though, so this
I
will
went
not
in
be
the
a
ocean last year in Florida, so simmer down. I also went in the ocean earlier this year against my will, but
I went in the ocean twice. I'm 30. But seriously, that you can get this parasite lives in, I mean, it could even be in tap water. This is how the lady back in August got it from taking a shower. Oceans, freshwater lakes, and things like that. They say that most of the cases actually of this, there's not that many. There's only been 1,500 reported in a year, which is like nothing.
but they said 90% of the people have been contact
wearing
lens
contacts. Yeah. So there's something about the contact trapping the organism behind the eye like that. That's, oh my God.
I don't know. Like, this is definitely, I wear contacts really often. I've been trying to wear my glasses more often because I just noticed I have, I'm working on a computer a lot more, so I have a lot more eye strain. But I do find it easier when you're going to the beach or something to wear contacts because your glasses get all gross and sandy and with the sunblock greasy and everything.
Prescription sunglasses are where it's at, man.
I know I have to order a pair actually because I've been wearing my glasses so much more, and I notice when I'm out, I'll like double up and put my big sunglasses on top of my glasses, and it looks so stupid. But
Yeah, I do that too in the car. I would do that in the car sometimes too. I really have worn contacts twice in the past 2 years. I just think they're terrible. But I understand that people like want to look cute and everything.
all right, let's talk about No Nut November. So apparently men participate in this trend every November where they go a whole month without ejaculating because they think it helps boost their mentality and improve their concentration.
Is this like the isn't there a no shave thing and all, like
No shave
like what is
November.
yeah. I don't actually know anybody that's actually participated in this, because then you can't have sex for the month either. You're just not nutting all month, I guess. But I guess there's no harmful consequences of this except that you would get serious blue balls, which are, when you have prolonged erections that aren't being released. Also, masturbation can decrease your heart rate and like cause less anxiety and all that things. So they're the things that I guess the specialists in this article are saying to beware of. But that's it's all kind of ridiculous. I just don't. I don't know if there's any scientific studies that prove that it actually boosts mentality, improves concentration, and all that stuff. I, in fact, would say that it makes concentration worse because at least when you masturbate, you get it out. You have this like distraction, but then like you do your thing and then it's done. This is like you're constantly thinking about it. I just feel like it would make you more distracted.
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know. That's just me.
the specialist that was interviewed for this article was saying it just doesn't make sense because if you are deciding to have sex but you aren't going to go to the point of ejaculation, it could cause a strained sexual relationship between you and your sexual partner because you're taking all the energy out of the moment and you're focusing so hard on not ejaculating. Like you said, it could give you pain with blue balls and everything, and it could also cause you stress and anxiety instead of, helping your mentality. And she's suggesting a much healthier option would be to avoid pornography instead of avoiding ejaculating as a whole. So it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything? Like that doesn't have, if they're saying that the theory is that it does all these things from holding it back, then like not watching pornography is not going to achieve that.
I
You
guess
understand?
because when you watch porn, it's like taking you into this fantasy world and it's like, I don't know. It's just setting up unrealistic expectations. I hear a lot of sex experts say how it like
No, it is. I'm not saying I'm sure it does, but I'm just saying like that's not like an equal substitute for me.
So, on the topic of sex, there's a throat cancer epidemic right now, and they think that it's possibly linked to oral sex.
Yeah, so and this is 100% true. So the HPV virus that we've all heard about that causes cancer and pre-cancer and cervical cancer in females can also happen to males with and females. Both, you could get it in changes in the anus, which could lead to cancer, and you also can get it in the throat. And it's becoming more common than it used to be, which I don't understand, because in the same sentence they're trying to push that you should get the HPV vaccine, but that's been around for a while, so you would think that it was actually getting better. But I guess the whole point is that most people that get the HPV vaccine have been adolescent girls, teenage girls. Now they're saying that boys should get it too, because there's no point in just vaccinating half of the population when it comes to a virus that could cause cancer like this. HPV is one of the most common sexually transmitted viruses that we get. Most people get it and they don't even know they have it, because your immune system just kind of takes care of it, right? But in some people and in some different strains of the virus, your immune system can kind of not react well to it and get rid of it. And then that causes the virus to continually replicate, which can cause damage to DNA, which could lead to precancer and cancerous cells. So if you have oral sex and you're exposed to that virus, you're at a potential to get that. If you have anal sex, vaginal sex, all of it, you are. So the thought of the vaccine is that it protects you against the higher risk strains of the virus, so you wouldn't get it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I had it and you had it, and one of my kids had it too.
The vaccine, not
yeah.
HPV.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't know, because probably you've had HPV. Like everybody, it just spreads like wildfire like that. You just wouldn't always even know. But I think for me personally, I got it because I was a cytotechnologist, and that's cyto, CYTO, not psychologist, like some people think that I was saying. But I used to look at pap smears all the time at my job and saw the hell that some women were going through with the HPV virus, just because you can get it and it could go away. Sometimes you could get it and it could cause really terrible warts that are very hard to get rid of. Sometimes you could have precancerous cells and they just have to keep cutting pieces of your cervix out and it still doesn't go away. It just seems like some women go through hell with it.
Don't most women your age, though, not have it? Didn't you get it as part of some trial?
Yeah. So I think that it started for you. It was in the rotation, but for at the time they weren't giving it to people, because I think I was like 27 when I got it, and I was already considered to be too old to get it. But I don't know if that exists anymore. But you're seeing that there's this increased risk of throat cancer now too because of it. So I don't know. I just personally decided to do it just because I didn't want to have to go through that, and I knew they're talking about this now, but even when I was in school, we were learning about anal and we were learning about throat cancer caused by HPV. So I don't know why this is like 20 years later, all of a sudden we're talking about it, because we've been talking about it, but I just personally was like, I don't want that shit. Okay. Other death news.
So in 78, this man was renovating his house at a home outside of Chicago and came across a skull inside of the wall. But apparently it wasn't looked at till 2021, which, why? That's a really long time, don't you think?
It is a long time, but prior to going to school for all this and everything, if you would have asked me if I was in the woods and I came across a skull, I would be like, oh, I'm keeping that. I would never give that to police. I want that, But now you're like, you have this underlying guilt of like, okay, that's a person, that's a police investigation. You have to hand that in, kind of. And that's probably what happened with this guy. Like when I renovate my house and I find like cool newspaper articles and stuff, I have all of it saved aside, because it's just this history storytelling of who used to live in my house and all this stuff. And that's probably why the guy just didn't turn it in.
No, I think he turned it in. I think the coroner did not look at it until 2021.
Oh, because I thought it said that the skull was finally sent to the coroner's office in 2021.
Unclear what happened in between, but
yeah, because I'm just trying to say, like, any person that's got an old house that finds shit in their wall, that's a great thing to bring out at parties. Like,
a great thing to bring out at parties.
Yes, I found a shot glass. Oh, look what I found in my wall. I found a broken record for the Star Spangled Banner in my wall too, by the way. No, no. Oh, yeah, look what I found. I found this human skull in my wall. Like,
Anyway, in 2021, the coroner's office gets it and finally starts looking at it. And then over the next couple years, they were able to build a DNA profile and link the DNA to this 69-year-old man who refused to believe it was his relative for a while. So it turns out it was this guy's great great grandmother named Esther. She died in 1866. Over 150 years ago, she died.
all right, so they say the story that she died was that she was married and then she got pregnant, she had the baby, and she died
Due to
shortly.
complications from childbirth.
Complications from childbirth, which is completely normal around that time period, especially. How the hell did her skull end up in this guy's wall? I would like to know this.
Well, so she died in Indiana, right? And this is in Illinois, right outside of Chicago. So they think that after she was buried and everything after her death, that she's possibly the victim of grave robbing and that a grave robber took her remains. And that's how it ended up in this house. Because otherwise,
but all they found was the skull. There was no other bones.
yeah, the only thing they could think of is it was a grave robber that took some stuff and for some reason that ended up in the wall being hidden. But because otherwise, who's taking it up? She was buried.
I know, but I don't think I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't need to do a homicide investigation from that long ago, but I'm just curious. Like, you can't just assume that's what happened.
Well, I don't think there was a homicide.
Whenever there's, yeah, I mean, they would be able to see, well, not necessarily, but
I do like on the sketch they made of her that they gave her a little Victorian flair.
I know,
A
I
cute
did
little
like that
Victorian
too.
braided haircut.
Well,
and a
he
little
said,
dress.
and he said that the composite sketch looked like his grandma or his mom, right?
Yeah.
It resembled his mother.
He
which
was
is
totally
so cool.
refusing to believe it. He was like, please stop talking to me about it. I don't believe it. And then,
If someone called me and said that, I would think it was a joke too.
yeah, I mean,
What if somebody called you and was just like, hi? I mean, I guess if it was the police, I would take it more seriously, maybe. But
I don't know. I feel like if a rando called me, I'd be like, wow, really?
well, we know you would. You're like dreaming that somebody will call you and say something like this.
These DNA stories are my favorite. I think it's really cool that even if nothing bad happened to her when she died and she did end up getting grave robbed, whatever the proper terminology is for that, I think it's cool that they're able to link, this skull over 150 years later back to her. DNA
it's
is the
very
coolest thing
cool.
ever.
It's very cool. It's also kind of very scary that they're able to do that,
Well, I mean, everybody that's ever committed a crime is probably shitting themselves because it's just inevitable at this point.
I
that
was
you're
reading
getting
a
caught.
really good article today. I got to share with you. It was it's a scientific article, and it was about how people can falsely get accused of crimes from when their DNA is at a scene when they weren't there, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening. That is
Yeah.
really scary, but they also have to have some more evidence to link you to it. So I'm curious with
That just this article worries me a little bit with Brian Koberger.
I was just about to say that. So they have this DNA for Koberger, but they have to have a bunch of other evidence too, which it seems like they might, but they got to be really sure of it. So that trial is going to be happening in August next year, I think, if they don't postpone it.
And you guys are
again.
going to think we're like really annoying with it because we're probably going to give you updates every single
It's
episode.
going to be like mini court TV over here with us covering it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's cool they connected it. I think it's, this guy has some new family history. And I think it's interesting that he said the sketch looked like his mom. So
yeah, very cool.
yeah. All right, let's move on to questions of the day. So every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys can head over to our story and ask whatever question you want. How can bodies have maggots inside when they die? Is it because of the food inside of our stomachs?
I would say partially, but not really. What happens is they're not in your body when you die. They come to your body. So let's say you have a piece of steak that you're cooking for dinner on your countertop that doesn't have maggots or fly eggs on it, assuming that you just took it from the grocery store. But if you leave it on your countertop for a couple days, all of a sudden the flies will come and they will lay eggs, and then the maggots will come. So that's what happens to a person when they die too, because we are just a piece of meat, you know? So if you're in a house, in theory, if you die and you're in a house that's completely sealed, then there's no flies in the house, then that can't happen, which is part of the case that we were talking about earlier with the guy that was found mummified and dead on his toilet. Probably not likely, because the environment needs to be very dry and low insect activity, and it's not likely that he had maggots on his body at the time of death. Whereas especially if you die outside, forget it. There's flies everywhere, but there's always a fly in my house somehow because some kid leaves the door open or whatever. They just, you know what I mean? Like it just happened, especially in the summer. So, that's how it happens.
All right.
Is that what, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
For you?
I guess just like,
They're not, they start on the outside of your body too.
I think people are assuming when you cut the body open, they're like in there and not on the surface as well.
No, I mean, they can get in there because, and that was one of my first autopsies I did, that this guy must have had like a lot of poop in his colon right before he died. And there was like, the maggots are just like attracted to shit and rot smell. You know what I mean? So they just all went towards his anus and were like crawling up inside the anus of his body. But they don't start on the inside. They start on the outside and they work their way in and they eat the flesh as they're going in. So no, you wouldn't expect to open a body and find maggots inside like that
without them also being on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that answers the question, because I think it's like, I think a lot of people don't understand that they're feeding on like flesh and other contents, not just food. So
yeah, they're part of the decomposition process. It's just, you just always think about, whenever you're thinking about decomposition, just always think about when you have food with chicken, steak, whatever, that if you just were to put it, if I had a piece of steak right now and put it outside on an 80-degree day, how is it going to be different than putting it in the refrigerator for a week? It's just, that's what happens with humans, depending on where they're at when they die.
All right, next. Would you let your kids play contact sports if they wanted?
I mean, softball's not a contact sport,
well,
I guess.
I would say probably like you have girls, so I would say probably like football, hockey, like things where you're like checking in as up. Maybe, I don't know if like field hockey or lacrosse.
I mean, I can't say. I do always say if I had a son that I would not let him play football. But I don't have a son, so I can't really say. And if you have a kid that really loves something so much and you actually think that they might be talented and good at it and could do it as a profession, I can't imagine telling them you can't do that because of my fears, But in theory, I think like I would never let my kid play football.
Yeah, like
but there's other sports, I guess, too.
My little cousin Vincent plays football, and they have, I don't know how much this helps, but he is, I noticed, one of the only kids on the team where my aunt and uncle make him wear that guard on the back of his neck. So if he falls, it like helps his neck, I guess, to prevent concussions.
Oh, I never even
saw it before either. When I went to his game a couple of weeks ago, I was like, what is that? And I thought it was really interesting. I also found it interesting that they were one of the only parents that made him do it. Whatever, but.
Well, this is the thing too, when we play softball, it's like when I played softball when I was a kid, we wore a baseball hat in the outfield, just like the Phillies do or something, right? And then when you bat, you wear a hat, a batter's hat, like a helmet that's a little bit harder. Now it's like there's this giant shield on the front of the baseball helmet, and then they have these other shields that they wear in the outfield. I think they're a little bit overkill, but the kids have to wear them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're distracting to a certain degree. And then you kind of take away from the sport. I don't want to be one of those people, but I think there's just clear evidence now that people that get multiple concussions in their life have brain damage when they get older. And you want to prevent, and not multiple, like more than one. And I just don't want my kids getting concussions, but you can get a concussion just if you fall or whatever. Like one of the girl's friends just got one falling, playing around and joking around. But you want to try to prevent that as much as possible. So
I think there's some players too that go their entire career without getting a concussion. So I think it's more about, as a parent maybe, and your kids playing hockey or football in high school, how you're handling that if they are getting concussions, and not just letting them go or letting them have the right time to heal. Because I think some people are just willing to. We see this with the NFL a lot, that somebody will get a horrible concussion where their fingers are twisting and they're like essentially passing out on a field, and then they're playing the next weekend, right? So how are you having enough time to heal? And then they get another concussion 2 weeks later, and then they're playing the week after.
well, I'm not going to get into all of my theories on life right now, but I do have strong thoughts about the NFL and how much money they play these people and they use them, and they're essentially they're using them to make money and not taking into consideration or caring about their life because of the long-term effects that could happen after that.
I don't know if you know this from having covered Chris Benoit, but a guy that was a professional wrestler had gotten a really bad concussion, and then he ended up becoming a neuroscientist studying CTE after that happened to him. So when the incident with Chris Benoit happened, he went to the WWE and presented them with all this science behind it. And while I think Vince McMahon's a pretty terrible person in other aspects of life, he is one of the only people in professional sports that took CTE very seriously after that.
So they still don't take it as serious as they should, in my opinion. But
yeah,
you also there's that. There's just like the science part of me is just like, why is anybody doing this anymore? But then there's just like the realistic human side of me that's just like, imagine. I mean, listen, if I never saw football again in my life, like it would not change anything in my life. But for some people, it's their entire life.
Yeah, like
a lot of people, actually a lot of people, not some people. So you have to there's just risk with everything, you know what I mean? And you just have to be careful.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting in this particular documentary how they were saying like the NFL and the NHL totally blow it off and act like CT does not exist at all, right? And there's all this stuff going on with the NFL right now, coming out with these like helmet guards and whatever, but then all these players are coming out saying that they don't do anything, and even some wrestlers like Steve Austin's like, I don't believe in CTE, which is crazy because it is scientifically proven, but whatever. So I just thought that was interesting that, some people were taking it seriously, even though I think it was selfishly because he knew the health of his athletes meant the more money he was going to make, not because he actually cared about them as people. But whatever. Let's get on to the last one. If you guys could have any guests on the podcast, who would you choose?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'd say the obvious is Nance.
Yeah. You know what though? We just said this yesterday when we're hearing about the Menendez brothers getting out and stuff, and I was like, oh my God, they're going to be offered all these deals, and I was like, I hope they're going to come on Mother Knows Death to talk about their experience.
That would be an incredible interview process.
Yeah, that's not happening.
It's not happening.
They
can
cool. They can go on like legit pocket. No, I'm just saying. But it would be really cool. Just I mean, I'm into interviewing anybody and just talking to anybody about different things. So I don't know if I necessarily have a dream one, because then you could say, well, then Casey Anthony, like all these people that we talk about these cases all the time. Brian Koberger, like I'll talk to you. I'll talk to anybody.
Like the thing is that I would not want to be on his radar, like in the slightest. You can cover him and everything, but I don't know. I feel like it would be more scary than it is worth it. When we were at CrimeCon and I was at that drink and draw with the courtroom sketch artist, he was saying that like, it was kind of cool being in the courtroom and seeing all these like infamous people in real life. But then some of them are really scary.
Well, remember Laura Ingle was talking about that when we were interviewing her? I don't remember what the guy's name was, but she was talking to that guy at his house, and he ended up, you know what I mean? And just knowing that you're in the room with somebody that killed somebody and that they have your name on their radar is just a little uncomfortable, even though that might happen often, that people don't even really know about it,
Yeah, I mean, the guy was saying how, I guess in the Manson trials, how he dropped his box of pencils and Charles Manson, like, beeline looked right at him and was staring at him. I would have to leave the room. I'd be so scared.
Yeah, right?
I don't know. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously Nancy Grace. I think Chris Hansen would be really cool because I watched so much To Catch a Predator when I was younger, and I just think he's really fascinating
God,
person.
that show is so good.
It's
I
a
mean,
really good show.
It's good, but it's just so terrible that it's true. You know, I don't really know how to explain it because you don't want to say a show about pedophiles is good, but it's very enlightening
Well, it was
because
good at exposing people.
yeah, and it's good for every normal person that doesn't know that world to see that because it's just so hard for a regular brain to fathom that people are capable of these things. That's why all of these podcasts are so great and just like bringing more awareness to this because when you live in a sheltered life and you don't really know anything about that, your brain wouldn't be sick enough to even fathom that that's a possibility that people do that stuff. And when you're able to watch something like Catch a Predator and just watch these people that think they're talking to children and the stuff they say and the lengths they go through, it's so disturbing. And what are they catching? Like 0.01% of child predators, you know?
Oh,
This is
yeah.
happening all day, every day. It's just so freaking scary.
No, it really is. I mean, there are countless people I think that would be incredible to have on this show. I mean, it's one of those questions, you know, when people are like, what's your favorite case? And you just, you know, you've covered like thousands of cases, but you can't think of a single one of them. That's just kind of how this is.
Yeah.
I know in my head there's at least 25 people that would be my dream guest on this show. I mean, I feel like we've gotten most of my dream guests, though. Having Joseph on and Matt Murphy and Laura, like, it was, and Cheryl.
We've definitely had some really awesome people on so far. So
Yeah, we've
just
been really
continue
lucky
with that.
But if you guys have suggestions of guests you would
I
like.
do want Dr. Bodden on too.
Oh, Dr. Vada would be really great.
We should hit him up again.
Yeah. If you guys have suggestions too, send us a message or an email and let us know. I mean, we're always open to reaching out to people and see if they want to come on. So, all right. Well, that's it for today. If you have a shocking story, don't forget to submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. Also, don't forget about our giant microbes giveaway. So we have 3 new plushies to give out. So you can either leave us a written review on Apple or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Send us a screenshot of either to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. And we are going to pick a winner on Friday, November the 1st.
Yeah, I think for our next giveaway, we're going to have some other stuff too, some good stuff.
Yeah, so we're trying to get to, and we're going to try to do a really fun 5-year giveaway because the gross room is turning 5 this month, which is crazy.
I know. That is crazy.
So we're going to try to do a really good, fun giveaway for you guys for that one. Give some new stuff you haven't seen before and maybe a special experience.
Yes. And we're going to do a really good episode for Halloween this week, like a Halloween spooky special. So stay tuned for that.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.